Mic on?
Hello?
Yeah.
It is.
Good.
First of all, thank you for coming to my talk. I know it's tough after lunch. I usually go on a siesta after lunch. And, thank you very much for coming here instead of taking a nap. So today's presentation is about malware automation. So who am I? My name is Christopher Elisan. I'm the principal malware scientist at RSA NetWitness. When I first began analyzing malware, I had long hair. My hair was up to here. And now, almost all of them are gone. So. And I'm also the author of Malware Rootkits and Botnets, a beginner's guide. So if you have a budget for a book, please get a copy. All proceeds go to my kids' 529 college fund. So please get a copy. In Amazon, I think it's $28. If you buy it from a bookstore, it's $40. So it was just published August of last year. Before joining RSA, I was with Ambala for 3 years. I was their resident malware reverser and researcher. Before that, I was with F-Secure. I actually built their Kuala Lumpur Research and Development Center. And before that, I was with Trend Micro. It was in Trend Micro that I first started analyzing malware. So they hired me straight out of college. And during that time, they didn't send me an email. Instead, they sent me a telegram. So I was telling the story to my kid, and he doesn't even know what a telegram is. So I should have saved it. It would have been cool to have a screenshot here, but I think my mom threw it away or something. And you can follow me at Twitter. You can send me questions at Twitter. If you need any help on malware or anything security related, I would be happy to help out. Just send me a message at Twitter. And this is a link to my blogs in RSA's blog site. So our team is called RSA FIRSTWATCH. We're a threat research team, so we specialize in new, emerging, and unknown threats. So we work with our customers and also with law enforcement, trying to track down actors behind any attack campaigns. And you can also follow us in RSA FIRSTWATCH. That's the Twitter handle. And we blog in blogs at rsa.com. All right, so now the exciting part. What's the purpose of the talk? So the purpose of the talk is to understand the tools and methodologies behind the staggering number of malware that has been discovered in a periodic basis. And for us to be able to achieve that purpose, I would first discuss the current state of malware, the attacker's arsenal. So what are the tools the attackers use to achieve the end goal of having an army of armored malware? And then after that, I would describe how they actually create the army of armored malware. And then after that, I would be discussing what's the advantages of automation when it comes to conducting an attack. And then I would give a live demo, and hopefully it works. So this is the current state. So if you guys have security vendors, almost yearly you get some sort of report that I usually call a horror story. It's supposed to horrify you, say, by their security products. But they would always only tell you about the number of malware. What they're saying is true. Every year, there's millions and millions of new and unique malware samples that are found. Like for this one was last updated in June 6th of this year. And there's almost more than 30 million difference from last year. So the year is has not yet ended, but still there's already 30 million more samples that have been discovered. So the key word there is discovered. So this doesn't account for the malware samples that hasn't been discovered yet. So before, when there's an attack being conducted, usually it only involves one type of malware. So when you capture that malware, you create a solution for it, you deploy that solution, you could actually stop the whole outbreak, the whole attack. But right now, when an attacker targets an enterprise or targets everybody that it can target and get information from, the attackers now uses an army of armored malware. So it's not just one single piece of unique malware or one malware coming from a single family. They're actually using different malware family in conducting an attack. So later in the presentation, I'll explain in detail what's the advantage of using multiple malware families when conducting an attack. But first, let's go to the tools that the attackers use. So they use DIY kits, these armoring tools, packers, encryptors, joiners, binders, and they also use AV scanners for quality assurance purposes. So going to DIY kits. In 1992, this one came out. It was created by a 15-year-old kid from Chicago. So when this came out, this was really very cool because you can create malware just by mastering the command line commands of this tool. You don't even need to have assembly language skills to create your own malware. But of course, this is not as sophisticated than the ones we use today, but it's more of like a hobby for this guy. And as you can see here, unlike now, they actually put their name there or their code name when they're actually releasing a tool like this. So not to be outdone, another hacker group, or I would say malware writing group, the PSMPC group, the Falcon Schism mass-produced Falcon Schism, also created their own kit. So they call it a mass-produced code generator. So it's the same concept as a VCL. You could create malware samples using just command lines. You don't need to have assembly language skills. Now fast forward 15 years, 20 years, we get kits such as a SpyEye, which is much more complicated. And one of the main differences of the kits we see today from the kits we see before is that kits before, they can produce finite amount of samples or finite amount of malware samples. So if you can generate all of those, create signatures for all of those, you have that kit covered. But most of the kits today, they use time and date as a seed. So as long as time exists, they could create infinite amount of malware samples. So another one is Zeus, also the same as SpyEye. They target financial credentials. So these actually are competitors. But as you can see here, it's very easy to create whatever you like. You could actually create a config file, putting there all of the network resources that the malware needs, and also the targets that the malware would like to target. So even though it's much more complicated than the kits before, it's still easy to create malware using DIY kits. Another difference from the older kits before is that the malware samples that are produced, they're encrypted. So they're actually different, how they appear on disk is different for each generation, and also how they appear in memory is also different. So the attackers, they could actually rely on the protective mechanisms that's provided by the kits. But of course, when you're conducting an attack, you want to be sure. So they also utilize other tools such as armoring tools such as the UPX packer. So UPX is very common already. You could actually unpack a binary that's been packed in UPX in just seconds. You can just download on UPX, run that tool, and then you can unpack it. Or if you're a hobbyist, you can use OllyDebug. You can unpack it in 5 minutes. But still, it's being used today. Now, before, the most popular UPX is the command line. Now you could buy something like this, like the script kiddies who doesn't have any idea that they could download this for free. They could some of them buy it from people in hacker forums for like $20, $30, $10. But that one thing you can see here, even though it says here UPX GUI, free UPX, they seem to be different and they have other options. But then when you look at the codes, some of the modules, especially the one that's responsible for packing the malware sample, it's totally the same. So my educated guess is that the people who are creating this tool, they just create those modules and then they just repackage it and then sell it for like $10, $20 in the underground. So the same thing, this is a compressor, so it has additional options. It has anti-debugger, crack, it can compress resources. So this one is much more expensive. Probably you could buy this for $50. But the trick here is that when you're actually analyzing tools like this, some of the options, some of them work, some of them, they really don't work. They'll put something there, you can tick a box, but then it wouldn't do anything in the executable. Sometimes it will just add their garbage code that actually doesn't do anything. So it's, because the way I analyze tools like this is that I have what I call a pawn exe. So it's an executable that I'm really familiar with. So whatever changes is made to that executable, I just remove those changes and then I reverse those changes. So some of these options, they don't really work. So another armoring tool, so actually like this one is in the cloud service. Not all tools you can install in your system or use in your system. This one is available in the cloud. So when I was doing my experiment before, they were offering this for free. But now, when you go to indetectables.net, if it's still alive today, they would ask you for an access code, and you have to pay for that access code. Now the advantage of whoever owns this service is that whatever you upload here, they get a copy of it, and then they can sell it. It's easy to sell a malware sample in different hacker forums or underground forums. You can sell them for like 1 cent, 10 cents. So it doesn't, like 10 cents, it's a small amount of money, right? But if you sell 1 million samples for 10 cents, that's a lot of money. So I will show that later, how easy it is for them to create or generate an army of armored malware. So another tool is a file joiner. During the computer virus days, the infection routine is actually built into the malware. So once it finds a host file, it will infect that file. So the infection routine is already built into the malware. But right now, you really don't need to have that infection routine because infecting a file is already lame. So most of the deployment methodology used by malware, it's network related. But of course, it doesn't hurt an attacker if he has a malware file that can also infect other files, especially if you're targeting an OS that you don't want your malware to be extracted from. So this tool actually made the infection routine into a tool. So the main idea here is that you have a malware sample. You have all the features that you need for your attack in that malware sample, and now you want to deploy it. Now for you to effectively deploy it, you can attach it to different popular files. You can attach it to a GIF file, an MP3 file, a document file, or an executable file that's very, very, I would say, popular. And then you can just share it online, drop it in any software download site. You can spam it, or you can deploy it whatever. Put it in a USB stick, and then bring those USB sticks in a conference like this and put them on tables and on chairs. So and then once they plug it to their PC, it will launch the malware. So those are different deployment technologies that you can use. So this is the same thing, exe bundle, file joiner, they're the same thing. So these two tools, even though they look different and they're packaged differently, most of the modules that I found in them are very, very similar. So again, they're either borrowing source code from each other or they're stealing from each other's source code vault. So AV scanners. So of course, if you want to attack something, you want it to be undetected. Now this is just, I'm just showing here an example of AV scanners. But most attackers, especially those that are sponsored by states or competing entities, they have the budget to actually have appliances with them, a very popular security product, so they can test their creation against it. Especially those that use network deployment technologies, they want to make sure that whatever network protection an enterprise they're targeting is using, they can bypass those protections. But this is one example of a multi-AV scanner. So the main idea here is that you can run this tool and then it would check against all AV that's listed here whether their creation is detected or not.
Is a cloud service or just the included scanner in the product already? And all the users VirusTotal to do a scan?
Oh, I'll go to VirusTotal later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll go to VirusTotal later.
So those scan engines is integrated in that software already.
No. The question is, he's asking whether the scan engines are integrated into this tool already. So this tool would actually download those scan engines. So the scan engines, usually they're the DLL files or the executable files that's being used by the security vendors to scan your AV. So what this does is it downloads them, cracks those engines so that they would actually work in the same box, and then it could run those. But then the disadvantage of them doing that is that sometimes they kill the dynamic scanning feature of these AV vendors, so they're only left with the static scanning features of the vendors. So there's still a disadvantage for that. But of course, there's a workaround there. They could just create a VM box, install one of those the AV vendors they want to bypass, and then subject their malware creation there. So if you don't have that tool, you can use VirusTotal or no VirusTanks, but nobody uses VirusTotal, especially if you're going to conduct an attack, because every time you submit a sample to VirusTotal, they submit it to different security providers. But then again, the reality there is that AV vendors, they receive like hundreds of thousands of malware samples every day, and all of those are put in priority. So whoever's the highest paying customer has highest priority for their samples to be processed. So most of these samples that coming from, let's say, from regular folks from the industry, or coming from submissions like VirusTotal, they go to the lowest queue, and sometimes they don't get processed like in months, even years, especially if the AV company is really busy on solving high priority stuff. But here in No Virus Tanks, they have the option that says do not distribute sample. But of course, we're not sure whether they're really distributing it or not. You can just tick here, and nothing's preventing them from actually distributing those samples. All right, so putting all the tools together. So you have the DIY kit malware. So the DIY kit malware will produce samples. As I said, it could virtually create infinite amount of malware samples because it uses time as a seed. So as long as time exists, it would create a unique malware sample. And then you can subject those to different armoring tools, cryptors, real-time packers, and other armoring tools. Now, right now, they can afford to do this. During the DOS days, they cannot. Because as the malware file increases, and the more evasion techniques you put in that malware file, it takes on much more memory and much more computing power. So every time that you run it on a system, it will slow down the system. But here, since computers are fast, memory is cheap, hard disk is cheap, they can afford to do this. And the good thing about here is that they could actually interchange all of these tools, and then it would look different. So not only on disk, but in memory, and also the codes, it would actually look different. So if somebody is not really familiar with the tools or the DIY kit that has been used here, they might label it differently. So this is what's killing the automated systems of most security companies. As you can see from the figure earlier, that there are like millions and millions of samples that are seen every year. Nobody can process those. Even if it's one company employing all of the AV researchers in the world, nobody can process those samples. So everything's processed in an automated way.
So for the millions of the samples, do you have a number? How many of them is generated by automation? How many of them is just hackers manually write?
Yeah, we will go there later. Yeah. So once they're done armoring their malware, they go through their quality assurance. They can use the InterCloud AV services. They can use their on-premise AV. They could use the appliance that they have access to make sure that their creation is can bypass all of those security solutions. Now here, sometimes if it's a targeted attack, remember there are two types of attack. We have the opportunistic attack and we have targeted attacks. Opportunistic attack is what we see in public. Usually they're the ones who make a lot of noise. They're the ones who infect millions and millions of people. Targeted attacks, usually they target a single entity or single company. And sometimes the malware that's used for that attack is only designed to actually infect a handful of computers, so there won't be enough noise when they're doing whatever they're supposed to do. Now for them, so let's say they're targeting company A, and company A uses security product B. So even though in their testing, that sample that they're going to use to attack that company is detected by any security product, but it's not detected by security product B, they would actually deploy it. Especially if it's a hit and run attack. When I say hit and run, they infect the system, get what they want, probably 3 minutes, and destroy itself. So they don't need to have that much time. They don't need a long time for them to actually do what they're supposed to do inside the system. So how do they get those information? It's actually very easy. If most companies, when they're hiring people, all of the information they need is in the job sites. So let's say we're hiring a Windows 2000 server admin that's well-versed in Active Directory and is well-versed in security product A, managing security product B, willing to learn this, and that. So you already have that information. Now if the company is security savvy, they would have those information. But sometimes the people who are already in the company, they would use technical websites, especially if they have a problem with whatever they're doing inside their company. Probably they're having problems with configuration. So they would go to Experts Exchange, post their problem, and then use their real email there. So that's also a telltale sign. Another source of information to tag that certain information to a company. Now some people, they would use a fake email address, but then when they copy-paste an email coming from someone that's asking that question, sometimes they fail to delete the signature of the original person that's asking that question. So that information is still there. Or you could just call the company, do a social engineering and ask for whatever, just tell them you're doing a survey. Or when I was doing a BS799 audit, it was like a security audit. So some people, you just wear a polo shirt, get a clipboard, you can actually go inside the company. And nobody will ask questions. And it has been proven time and time again that it usually works. So let's say it passes its A/B testing, then the attackers will have access to an army of armored malware. But of course, if you cannot afford the DIY kit, like if you're familiar with the Citadel that just leaked out before, in the underground, it's selling for 40 grand a pop. But ever since it leaked out, it's worth nothing. So unless you have access to a leaked DIY kit that you can modify or you can just use as is, sometimes attackers just use old malware. Use old malware, a malware that has all of the features that you need, run them through all of these armoring tools, and they will become new again. They will become undetected again. I actually had a talk about this. I call it the green malware, made from 100% recycled malware. So, and it's very easy to find old malware. Just get yourself infected. Probably most of you have grandmas, aunts that are not really computer savvy. They would call you in the middle of the night, telling you they cannot access the internet or something's popping up, like a porn picture or something. And you remotely connect to that PC, and you can find a wealth of malware samples from their system. So if all of us have access to those, the attackers also have access to those. Plus most attackers, they share information better, actually compared to professionals. Most attackers share information better than us. So what's the advantages? Exponential effect. The more samples you have, the better it is for you. You can sell, if you don't want to use them in an attack, you can sell them for 1 cent a sample or 10 cents. Some people actually buy it.
Sorry,
I'm wondering who's buying those, because if it's for sale for 1 cent, is that sort of like a licensing thing where if you want to infect 10,000 systems, you have to buy this thing 10,000 times?
Oh, you buy it per piece. So when they sell you something, they won't sell that sample ever again, or so that's what they say.
Oh, I see. So it's globally unique.
Yep, yep. So by the way, when I say unique here, it's not the traditional unique as what's described by most security professionals. Because you can just get a file, add 1 byte at the end of that file, take a hash of it, and then it's totally unique. And most of the time when you see the stats, the horror story stats in the beginning, usually that's how they define unique. So when I say unique here, it's like a metamorphic malware. It's unique on disk, and it's also unique in memory. So it's totally unique from each other. So another advantage is an easy malware update. And of course, to knock AV out. Anyway, this is old news, but I keep bringing this up because even though the AV industry knows there's a problem here, the way they're tackling the solution is really slow, probably because there's no budget or other marketing needs take precedence over real research on finding out the solution. So the exponential effect. You can get a malware DIY kit. You can create infinite amount of malware samples. Take that one malware sample, run it into an armoring tool, and just based on that one malware sample, you could create infinite amount of malware samples again. So you can do that because some armoring tools also use time and date as their seed. So they have encryption built in. They use other keys found in the main malware, or they can use random keys. And they also add date and time as a seed. So just to make it much more difficult for reversers. So usually, if a tool uses time as a seed, it could virtually create an infinite number of malware samples, unique malware samples.
This process you're showing here, it's I guess kind of an encryption thing. Have any like standards emerged or common patterns? Like I'm thinking that this looks like maybe eventually it would evolve into a little bit like feedback modes, you know, that's used in traditional encryption. So I'm wondering, is this always just random? Like the guy who's running it just makes up a pattern, or?
It depends on the tool. Like the tool I'm going to demonstrate, it randomizes the characters that it uses as a key. So it actually goes back to history, but I'll explain later why. So you can run it again, another arming tool, and then so on and so forth to create all of those unique malware samples.
How unique are the samples that are coming directly out of the malware DIY kits? I mean, are they just adding a few bytes to it?
Oh, they're totally unique.
Hash,
I think they have their own metamorphic engine.
Okay.
So and their metamorphic engine is not as limited as the traditional metamorphic engine.
Yeah.
So there's actually a guy who was able to statically decrypt zoo samples. So when he showed it to me, he got like 100 zoo samples, and then he ran his tool, and then when all of the encryption has been removed, all of the metamorphic effects from the metamorphic engine has been removed. When you compare all of the files, you could see they're totally the same. So he was able to extract the main germ of that malware sample. So by the way, if you guys hear the term germ, it's actually a term used to describe the malware in its purest form, a malware that hasn't been armored in any way. So the main idea there is if you get a germ, you get you use IDA-Pro, whatever code you see there, that's the main code of the malware. There's no tricks to hide anything.
You're saying these things are unique in memory? So
Yep.
Could you dump the process memory and they wouldn't
Yeah,
be the same anymore?
Unlike polymorphic malware, wherein they're different on disk, but then when they're running in memory, because a polymorphic malware still uses a it has three components. It has the encryption, decryption routine. It has the key, or allocation to the key, and then it has the malware code. So in a polymorphic malware, for the malware code to run, it would decrypt it, and of course in memory everything has to be decrypted for anything to run or for any data to be processed. So once it's decrypted, you can just grab that memory image, create a signature for it, and whatever malware, whatever antivirus product you use that has dynamic analysis, dynamic scanning capability, you could already detect that polymorphic malware. But here it's totally different. So it actually doesn't use those three components. It changed the game completely. So instead of using those three components, what it does, it mutates the code every generation. Now, how that mutation is done, so the key there is actually reversing the kit itself. So actually in the industry, most people still approach malware problems wherein they reverse the actual malware sample that's seen in the wild. When in fact, the best way to do it is to actually reverse the kit itself. When you reverse the kit, it also has different protections that makes it very hard to reverse. Now I can stand here and tell you guys, you can reverse this, reverse that, but in reality, reversing takes a lot of time. So during the DOS days, I can reverse a malware in minutes. So, but now it's much more complicated. Sometimes it takes me days, weeks, even months, and sometimes I cannot do it alone. I need the help of other reversers. That's why if you would see, when somebody releases a report about a certain attack, about a certain threat, sometimes it takes them months to actually release that report, because that's the time it took them to actually find out everything about that certain malware or that certain attack. So that's why every time there's a DIY kit that's leaked and the source code is available, it makes it easier for us to actually understand what that kit is doing. So going back to your question about the randomization of the keys in the tools. So there's actually a history behind that. So before, when a malware, when an infecting computer virus tries to infect a file and it wants it to be totally different, what it does is it has a fixed location in the malware code that says, when you take a host, if you want to infect a host file, go to this location, get the first 35 bytes that you see, and use that 35 bytes to encrypt that malware or to do whatever you want to hide the real malware code, and then infect that file. Now, since that is very easy, because you could just have like hundreds of calc.exe, and you could actually determine where that location is, and then you could get that key when you're doing reversing. So you have the malware sample, which has the decryption, encryption routine, and then you have the key, because you use it against a file that you're really very familiar of. Yeah, so you have the key, you have the encryption decryption routine, that's the malware code, and now you can reverse it. You can actually create a solution for it. But in tools, what it does, it doesn't use that the technique anymore of getting random bytes from the host file that it's targeting. It's actually randomizing it on its own. Now, it's not really random, because there's still mathematics going on in the malware code that's actually generating those. So if you're able to reverse one of those tools, you can actually generate all of those random characters that it's creating. It's like a DGA malware. So if you're familiar with the domain generation algorithm, like configure. So when you look at the different domains, it connects to every day, like 5,000 for, I think it's 5,000 for configures here, 5,000 or 50,000. When you see that, when you look at it with your bare eye, with your naked eye, you think it's random, but actually it's not. There's mathematics involved for it to generate those random, I shouldn't say random, for those domains. So same concept that's being used in this tool. Now, easy malware update. So you can have unique samples per malware deployment technology. So what's a malware deployment technology? So it's a technology that you use to actually deliver your malware from the attacker to the target. It doesn't need to execute the malware, it just needs to touch the target. So what are those very popular deployment technology? You have a drive-by download site, you have USB sticks, you have emails, among others. So let's say I'm going to create a very sophisticated attack. I would like to spam 10,000 of my samples. And instead of me using the same sample for those 10,000 emails that I'm going to spam, for each of those emails, I would put their one unique malware sample. So 10,000 spams, 10,000 unique malware samples. Now the trick here is that, let's say I'm company A. I get one of those emails, and then I send it to my AV vendor, and then they solve that dropper, let's say, or that malware that's being deployed. And then the AV vendor would say, just deploy the solution, that would be stopped. But then the next day, they would still be, when they look at their logs, they would say, why is their information still going out of my company? I already deployed the solution. The reality there is that whatever they submitted to their AV vendor, that wouldn't be seen anymore. That would only be seen once. That's why when I really don't believe in describing, let's say, we're creating a report about a certain attack. These are the hashes of the malware. Those hashes are the only ones that you've seen. Probably wouldn't see them anymore. Probably you'll only see them once. You'll only see them in that certain deployment technology. So your solution is only as good as the number of malware samples that you have, even though you're creating heuristic signatures. Now, if you can stop that one, what happens to the other 9,999? If it gets in, if somebody's not tech savvy enough in your organization, happen to click that sample, then you get infected already. And also, malware serving domains can rotate malware in minutes. So when it comes to a botnet attack, the bot agent uses different network resources. They use it as a CNC, it's their command and control. And they also use it as a drop zone. If they're information stealing malware, they can use those domains to drop information. And they can also use it as their malware serving domain. Now, a malware serving domain is a domain that is responsible for updating the components or the configuration files of the malware inside your system. So unlike malware before, wherein everything that you need for an attack is packaged in one file, in one malware, most attacks right now, it's composed of different components. So you have the attack component. So the attack component could be the information stealing component. It could be the DDoS component. It could be the Trojan component. You have the bot agent, the one that's responsible for communicating to the network resources. You have the configuration files that would aptly tell the malware how it will do its job, or how it will communicate to the attacker. Now, one of the components that's my favorite is what I call the Horcrux component. So if you guys are familiar with Harry Potter, so the movie came out when I was in kindergarten. So Horcrux is that that component aptly hides itself, it's inactive. And then from time to time, it would aptly check whether the malware is still there or not. If it's not there, what it will do is that it would aptly initiate the bot agent, if it's still there, to communicate to the malware serving domain to download all of those components that are missing. That's why some people would say, hey, I just cleaned my system. How come it's infected again? Now, if the attacker has access to an army of armored malware, he could actually rotate it and not use a Horcrux component. He could actually rotate it, let's say, every 3 hours, or once every 24 hours, or every 2 days. So the main idea there is that if ever they capture a malware in a compromised system, and that malware sample is sent to somebody who would analyze it and provide a solution for it. And speaking from experience, the fastest solution cycle time when I was in Trend Micro was 2 hours. So if we cannot provide this doesn't include clean, it's only scan. If we cannot provide a detection capability to our product, we actually pay those customers. Now for this one, if it takes them 2 hours and then the malware and then the attacker actually wants to update it every hour, so by the time they deploy that solution, it's long gone. So they would say, oh, all of the solution has been deployed, we should be safe. But then again, since the attacker already updated the components with a totally different malware, but with the same directive, it actually makes all of those solutions useless. So that's how they knock AV out. So, see, Chuck Norris is very powerful. I think this is from Walker, Texas Ranger. So the young folks probably don't have any idea what I'm talking about. But it was a very popular show. And if you watch Conan O'Brien, he always makes fun of Chuck Norris when he was still in NBC. So here, when it comes to malware creation time versus solution cycle time, you can create a new malware in seconds compared to a solution cycle time. So a solution cycle time is the time a security vendor gets the malware and pushes out a solution for it. So as I said, the fastest is 2 hours. But then if the malware is very, very complicated, it takes longer than that. And as I said, it's only detection mechanism. It doesn't include the clean capability. Because most malware nowadays, they're so complicated and they embed themselves so much in the operating system that removing them would actually kill the operating system. So I always compare to an alien that that's actually attacked the human body. Removing that alien also kills the human host. So it's almost the same thing. Unless you have that capability as they have in Falling Skies, where they could remove that alien and then the boy still lives. I have a lot of free time to watch TV all the time. And if AV evasion effect is effectively utilized. So if you're a group of attackers that has been contracted by a rogue state or a rogue entity or a company, you can only have evasion technology available to your malware tools or malware components when you have the guy who's actually invented that technology. But nowadays, you can just buy the tool and you could have that capability. So whatever AV evasion technology is available out there, most of them have already been made into a tool. You can just buy those tools and then you could use them. So the tools actually became popular because before, when the bad guys communicate with each other, they actually communicate with the person directly. They don't know the person. They use email addresses. They use whatever form of communication that of course they're not using their real name. But of course when crap hits the fan and they're able to trace those people, then they could actually arrest those people. So what they did, instead of them communicating directly to their to whoever wants to conduct an attack, they just sell them the tools. So this tool is capable of this. If you want more capability, I would release a tool in this website, and then you could use this license key, and then it would unlock the feature that you need. So it's like a buffer between them and the people who are actually sponsoring the attack. And since, as I said earlier, since most of the samples that AV vendors or security vendors receive is in the hundreds of thousands, of course there's no way to process them manually. All of them go through a automated system where the malware is replicated. Even the signature creation now is automated. That's why the naming convention of AV is messed up. So AV vendor copies the naming convention from AV vendor B, and then C copies it from A, D copies it from C, and then it just goes around. So it's like that Hyundai commercial. So Toyota says, oh, Hyundai came up with this, and then BMW would copy that, and then they're just copying each other. So it's the same concept. And if you have 1 million samples in your arsenal, chances are they would create 1 million signatures for it. And of course, this does not scale. If you have a signature or any blacklist for that matter that's more than 5 meg, then there's something wrong with it. 5-6 years ago, there was an initiative in the AV industry which we call pattern slimming, wherein all of the signatures that are not needed anymore, they removed it so that they could actually send that very small file to customers. But then when they send the same thing to testers to test the detection rate of their AV, they send them a totally different signature. So that's how it works. And most of the malware used in attacks, some of them are simple actually. Companies would just say they're complicated because they're breached. So every time a company is breached, they would always say, I've been hacked. They use a very complicated malware. But then when you look at the malware, it's not really complicated. Sometimes you'll see it's a 10-year-old malware. That's why I came up with my top the green malware. Because once you remove all of the protective mechanisms, you'll find out that it's a very old malware. So yeah, as I said here, understanding the malware requires reversing, not just analysis. And as I said before, reversing is easier said than done. It's very easy to say, but it's very hard to do. I remember one time some press went to our company to see what we're doing, and he asked me, can you show me the most exciting day you have in your work? So what I did is just I turned on my PC, fired up IDA Pro, and then I showed him a code of one malware. I sat down and put my finger there, and I told him this is the most exciting day in my work. So after that, he didn't write anything about what I do. It's not exciting to probably to his readers. All right, let's go to the demo. We have 14 minutes left, so I'll try to make it quick. So in this demo, we will use Zeus.
Question here.
Yep.
So manual reverse takes a lot of time, There's many samples, but it's not scalable, How do you guys address that, How do you scale the reverse stuff,
So the shortcut to that one is that you prioritize. So usually most AV vendors prioritize based on paying customer. Or you can prioritize based on the noteworthiness of the malware.
But still, if at 10 or 30 guys, we have some millions of samples,
Yep.
That's still not the same level,
Yeah, so you actually, automation is still key, but you have to make your system smarter. So are you guys familiar with the machine learning?
Yeah, a little bit.
So instead of treating each malware sample as a malware sample, you treat them as data. So even all of the things that it produces in a sandbox, each line of code in the report in the sandbox, that's a data feature. So it would actually help you cluster, or I should say classify those malware. So the easiest is actually just classification, answering whether it's malicious or not. So it's just a yes or no answer.
But from the binaries, it's totally different. From the string, they just obfuscate everything, It's totally different binary, Using machine learning, it can help on that stuff.
Yeah, because so even though it's really protected, the machine would actually tell you whether it's malicious or not based on the data that the machine already know. So for you to be able to come up with that, if you have a massive amount of malware collection, you could actually get all of the data features from that massive malware collection, and the machine or the learning algorithm would actually treat it as something that's malicious. So it's like teaching the machine to say, if you see something like this or anything similar than this, it's malicious. So
so the machine learning you mean is totally static based, right? Static based features, not just.
Oh no, you could feed in features there. The features, you could actually extract it from static analysis. You can extract it from dynamic analysis. So
what's your practice, you involve some of the dynamic analysis, features, to the system or not?
Oh yeah. Like this is like a complete paradigm shift. So right now, when people say malware analysis, they would say, do you do static analysis? Do you do dynamic analysis? So this totally different paradigm is that, oh, by the way, while I'm answering his question, this is actually producing malware, and that's the number of malware that's being produced as I'm talking. So when you conduct static analysis, when you conduct dynamic analysis, it will have output, right? So those outputs, they're considered a feature of the file that you submitted in your static analysis box or in your dynamic analysis box. Now you take all of those data from known malware samples, and then you feed it into a learning algorithm, and then the learning algorithm would actually use those data so that when you feed something in again, let's say you use 1 million malware samples. So you feed all of those data, and then you feed one malware sample. So the simplest problem is just classification. So just yes or no. Yes for malware, no for benign file. So based on that data, you're able to actually identify that certain file that you input as malware. Then your learning algorithm already works. But of course, there are different learning algorithms out there, so you need to experiment all the time. Sometimes the accuracy is 65%, sometimes the accuracy is 95%. So what you do is that out of the features you've actually put into that learning algorithm, you remove some of them until you come up with a feature that would actually be much more effective and that the accuracy would increase. So let's say one feature is the compiler. Let's say based on your experiment, oh, I don't need to know whether it's Borland or Microsoft. I could take out that feature, and then the accuracy would actually, shoot up to 95%. So you can experiment on those. So if people who are interested in learning more about this, there's a very good book, Data Mining. So if you guys want to check it out, it's really, really very helpful.
So basically after you find the features, you do the feature selection, right? And you do the machine learning. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna generate your score, and based on the score, you generate a priority list, and then you choose the top in the priority list for reverse engineer, right?
You actually in this thing that I'm saying, you actually don't need to reverse engineer anything. So this is like a so it's like an automated system, because if you reverse engineer one, you're actually already defeating the automated system. So you're trying to make it that much more intelligent, so that you won't spend time in reversing the malware. You only spend time in reversing a malware if it's totally an outlier. So it's totally like, why is this not working? Why? And usually the system would actually tell you that. It would tell you these are samples that are outliers that really have nothing to do with what it's doing, but you know it's malicious. So probably there's something going on there. So those are the things that would be for your eyes only. I mean for your review.
So basically you have some knowledge that you know your system doesn't work, detection system doesn't
Yep,
work, but
yep.
you know it's malware.
Yep.
Then you do malware.
Yeah, so that's why when you're doing that, you actually need two components. You actually need two skill sets. You need a mathematician, so that's where the PhDs come in. And you need someone with domain knowledge. So that's where the malware...
Geeks come in.
Yeah, that's where the malware experts come in. So you marry those two, and then you come up with this very intelligent system that you don't need any signatures. The machine would actually tell you whether it's malicious or not. But then again, since it's supervised learning, whatever data you put there, that would be the basis of it. If you put crap in it, then it's also crap.
So is that just static characteristics that it uses, or is it dynamic?
It also uses dynamic.
They do unpacking too and stuff like that.
Yep. So one example actually is a sandbox output. So each line of those output, that's considered one feature. So that's one data that you can feed into the system.
Okay.
All right. So while I was talking, we were already able to produce 92 samples. So if you have kids, you can go out to his baseball game, come back, and then you'll have this number of malware samples you can sell or use on your own. Right, we have 5 more minutes, and now we'll go to the other tool. We'll do a quick demo of that tool. You know what's funny? It's like when you have 5 minutes left, it seems like you don't have enough time. But then when you look at Jack Bauer, the things he can do in a 24-hour period, it's really very impressive. So here I would use a saw. So this one just takes one sample from the one we just created, and this one uses a randomized characters. The one I made. This is not using time and data CC. So same concept. You will see here the number of samples that it would create based on that one sample. So this is also where the green malware comes in. You just put here an old malware and then become undetected again. But then again, this is just one tool. You could add more tools to this. So we were able to create 2, 3, and it's like what, one sample per like 3 seconds, or not even 3 seconds. All right, so to be quick, I was planning to create 1 million samples, but we don't have enough time. So let's put it all together. So what's a typical malware automated system looks like? You can get a bare metal system, very cheap bare metal system. You could have you could use a virtualization software to host your kit, host your arming tools. You could have a shared folder that would drop all of the created malware samples to that folder. And you could have an agent running in your bare metal system. Once it sees a sample in that folder, submits it to the other VM machine, and then all of the things that are created would be put in an armored sample folder. That's where you actually get all of your samples. Oh, not you, I mean the attackers. So that's where they get it. And again, you can just sit back, relax, line up for Man of Steel, and then come back, watch the 3-hour movie with a long fight scene, and then come back, you'll have this malware samples. Then you can just relax, be happy about it. You can sell it, or the attacker can sell it and do whatever he likes with those samples. And life is good. So that's it. If you guys have questions, again, @tops, can follow me on Facebook. LinkedIn, if you guys want to link up, let me know. And also, please don't forget to buy my book. It's for my kids' college fund. And again, questions, violent reactions.
Last question.
All right.
So I know that back to the machine learning one. The industry is really sensitive about false positive. Even the machine learning can 80% sure it's a malware, but you still cannot release a signature for that. I know Trinity Macro heavily use Hadoop. Do you know how they just from the 80% sure the malware to the final signature? What the step they do to make sure?
Yeah, there's actually no silver bullet to remove false positives. Even Configure, the 18 million domains it generates a year, it's bound to hit 2, 3, or 4 legitimate websites. So there's really no silver bullet for false positives.
They just release a signature. They are 80% sure it's a malware, or just
Oh, this one doesn't use signatures. You use a learning algorithm. So it's like so when you actually find out the learning algorithm, you could actually come up with an equation. So that equation, that's actually what's being used to determine whether something is malicious or not. Now I say that equation is what used. It's very easy to write that equation, but then coding that equation using C or whatever language, it's lots and lots of lines of codes. But then again, it might be 95% accurate, 96% accurate. I haven't seen anything that's 100% accurate.
I mean, do they deceive this thing initially to get, to have a good set or known malware so that they know what the machine learning is looking for?
Yeah, this is very good when you're doing experiments, because once you have access to a kit, you could generate samples, and then you would have that data to feed into your system. So at least you know. And after classification, you could go the next step, which is clustering. So clustering is that you're not only saying whether it's malicious or not, you're actually saying now that this is malicious and this is Zeus. This is malicious and this is Spia. And you can go a step further. You could say this is malicious, this is Zeus, this is created by Git version 2. This is malicious, this is Zeus, this is created by Git version 1. So it just depends how you want it to be that much more detail. Well, we have 1 minute left, so I think I still have time for one more question.
Who's this guy?
I think he's the guy from Duck Dynasty.
Oh.
All right, I have to stop. And thank you again, guys, for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.